Why don't you take us into the 30s and then into the 40s, and that's where I feel like things really start heating up, at least in the Japanese United States relation.
Yeah, definitely, because Japan at a certain point, just like Germany and everybody else, they kind of break out of this the situation they're in, where they're kind of limited for certain things, and then they just kind of start doing their own thing. And Japan becomes like very militaristic, and they begin to invade China. And one reason being is that materials and resources and things that Japan is desperately in need of. And so they have a decision here to invade China. Now, China is a friendly nation to the United States. And we have people over there at the time. But during this invasion of China, the United States really doesn't have much of an interest, because kind of at the time, China was actually in a bit of a civil war between their nationalists and their communist parties.
And it's something that had been going on for a while. You had the Boxer Rebellion a few years before that.
So the United States was like, we're not going to get involved in this because there's really nothing for us. There's no reason for us to go to war with Japan because of China right now.
Right.
Until July 7th, 1937. Chinese and Japanese forces, they clash in Beijing, and now they're in a full-scale war. And quickly, everything escalates. The whole thing. They take over northern China. They take over the Korean Peninsula. Now, the United States, President Franklin Roosevelt, he's there, and he says, I condemn this militaristic invasion and the spread of this and stuff, and he wants a peaceful resolution. Unfortunately, Japan's got this expansionist mindset, and they're not stopping. They're just going to do whatever they want regardless.
Yeah.
And they're not wasting any time.
Well, another thing, too, from the U.S.'s perspective, is you have to keep in mind is that we're still digging ourselves out of the Great Depression. I mean, we've had numerous years now of an economic depression. That takes a toll. That takes a toll on the wealth of the wealth of the country. So its political policies are going to reflect that.
Mm-hmm.
And two, I would assume, just like if it were to happen now, the wide majority of people would think like Ukraine or with anything,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's messed up over there, but maybe we fix what's wrong here first,
right,
before we start throwing lives, upon the altar of war.
And that is exactly where the United States stood at the time too. Even under President Hoover before Roosevelt, it was really an isolationist. America first. We need to take care of this and ourselves first. Before going elsewhere or doing anything else, So
yeah, which it had that tends to be America's philosophy all the way up until really around this time. I mean, if you think about it, George Washington in his farewell address talks about the importance of not going to Europe in search of foreign wars. It talked about being isolated, not even having long-term treaties. You can have short-term treaties, but don't enter into these permanent treaties with European nations, because it'll lead to a path that will be very costly. We don't ever enter into foreign wars, with the exception of, especially in Europe, except for World War I.
Yeah.
I mean, we have a few things where we go help and we aid, but they're relatively small encounters. Like the Boxer Rebellion, we have Marines that go fight for that. We have our we have a few times like the Tripoli Pirates and all that stuff, but they're all very small, pinpoint kind of operations. You think about our large-scale wars from the beginning of the nation up until World War I, and what do you have? You have the
Civil
Revolution,
War.
You have the War of 1812, you have the U.S. Civil War, and then after that you start going abroad, but we still stay in this hemisphere. You got after that you got the Spanish-American War down in Cuba.
Yep.
So it's not like it was like nowadays. If something happens in a foreign country, the U.S. is almost as if we're like we're the big brother nation.
We're probably already there.
And we go help. Yeah, we go help nations that need it. But if we're being honest, back then that was not the case.
Yeah, well, for Japan, not the case now. Their whole goal right now is to take Western influence and remove that from Asia and get everybody out of there and replace that with Japanese dominance.
Mm.
And so this is where things begin to get hairy because we have people there. The United States, we got the China Marines there. We got some pilots there, the Flying Tigers. We got people that are in the area. So in any event, these guys are at war, and I'll take you to December 12th, 1937. Japanese forces are pushing into Nanking, China, and the American embassy there obviously has got to be evacuated. They got American ships, one of them being the USS PANAY and 3 Standard Oil tankers operating a river nearby, clearly marked, clearly labeled with American flags on them. That was something that was discussed, why this became such a big thing. In any event, Japanese planes and bombers, they bombed these ships and strafed them and had a lot of problems. One sailor on the USS Panay had returned fire in his underwear. Yeah.
That's funny, dude.
Lighten him up.
That's probably his first gunfight, right?
Absolutely.
And my first gunfight, I was in my underwear. I mean, I wasn't. I should be honest. It wasn't a full-fledged gunfight. I was on one of the OPs.
Okay.
And some contractors south of us, I don't know, maybe like 200 meters south of us, 250 meters south of us, were in a pretty heavy gunfight with some Taliban, and we were watching them move. Like, they started a little east of us, and then we're moving directly across our southern flank and continuing west. Like that's the direction the firefight was going. So when the Taliban got like lined up with one of our posts on that OP, I was SOG at the time, and I was like not gonna. This is gonna sound messed up, but this is how it works. The senior guys get the first bite of cake,
Sure.
and I wasn't about to let a junior guy rip a 240 before I ever did. You know what I mean? I was like, I'm gonna shoot this thing first. Anyways, long story short, I was in skivvy shorts, skivvy shirt, flip flops, no helmet, no nothing. Radio just chilling on the elastic waistband. Yep. Ran up there, and I made such a new guy move too, man. You know how the posts, the 240's got the bipods.
Sure.
This wasn't mounted, like it wasn't mounted into a tripod or anything.
It's
It was
just up there on the roof somewhere.
Bipods, and there was a gap between the sandbag wall, like the exterior sandbag wall, and the platform of the post. Like they had the wooden 2x4 rail on the post. There was like a 2 or 3 inch gap between the two. And the bipods for the gun were on the sandbag in front of that. And like a friggin' noob, I had tunnel vision, man. They talk about tunnel vision, and it's true. It's true.
Yeah.
You get all excited, and you're like you have something you're aiming for. Well, I gripped the buttstock like I was if I was prone, like on the ground. To get a good stock weld on that and really like pull it in and rip. And I went to pull that trigger, dude, and I got like 2 rounds came out, and it went that, and then those bipods fell into that crack.
Ripping the sandbags
and my
open.
finger is just stuck on the trigger now, right? Like, and it is just ripping into those sandbags right in front of all the A&A guys are no good.
No good.
They're all making fun of me. I was like, shut up, man. I got it back up and fixed the problem. It didn't last long, but it was embarrassing for my first go. But I could imagine, I can relate you being in your underwear and hey, when it's time, it's time.
Yeah. Well, they're evacuating and they don't have much time to do it, so they're just in action, thrust into the action all of a sudden. And as a result, 3 sailors and 5 civilians are killed, and another 43 sailors are wounded in this bombing and strafing of the USS Panay and these tankers. So the USS Panay was a United States Navy gunboat and had been patrolling this Yangtze River in China. I will never be able to figure that out, but they're there. And during the attack, the ship sank. And, of course, this is going to cause diplomatic crisis between the United States and Japan. Well, to prevent further escalation between the two nations, Japan, they accept responsibility, they apologize, and they state that it was a mistake. Well, the U.S., they accept the apology and, like anything, like we know, continue to avoid any further conflict.
For us being a U.S. military show, obviously our main focus is the story from the
Yeah.
US's perspective and how it affected us.
And our guys
Uh,
got out.
Yeah. The truth of the matter is, though, is that attack at Nanking results in a massacre. It's oftentimes, because of a book, it is oftentimes referred to as the rape of Nanking, and justifiably so.
Yep.
Just to give a little background for what's going on over there, and what combat is already looking like, you know, under the shadow of the rising sun, if you
Yes.
will.
Yes.
Japanese forces are after Beijing. They are moving across the country quick, and they're approaching Nanking. And as they approach the city, Chinese forces, it's not a defensible
Right.
position. Nanking is not defensible, and so Chinese military pull out. The majority of them do, at least. So when the Japanese soldiers reach the city, they enter the city almost unopposed, and it is from day one an absolute massacre. I mean, you have looting just running rampant. There's going to be, now the numbers vary all over the place. It's hard to find concrete, statistics here. So I'm going to give you the range that we found, and I think, truthfully, I think that these numbers are probably closer to the higher end than they are to the lower end, if we're being completely honest and approaching this with open mind and being realistic. But there's 40,000 to 300,000 murders and executions in the city. You're talking mass
It's enormous.
executions. So any soldiers left behind, they're beheaded with samurai swords. There's all kind of women and kids being stabbed to death with bayonets. I've read that Japanese soldiers were to save bullets, they were stomping on I don't want to get too graphic, but they were using their boots to kill infants.
Yeah,
I'll put it
right.
that way. And that's just the beginning. There's also somewhere in the ballpark between 20 and 80,000 cases of rape that take place in a 6-week period, which is
Unbelievable.
unbelievable. That's unbelievable. I mean,
Everybody.
that is so many, and it's happening in one city, right? So this isn't like this is happening theater wide across all of China. This is one city in China that this is happening in.
Reckless, man.
It still affects their relationship to this day.
Of course, yeah, I would say so.
It's important to understand that as we move forward, because we've mentioned this numerous times. The war in the Pacific is a different kind of war than the war in Europe,
Yes.
and it's going to be things like this that will dictate that that outcome.